So with that, it's about time, and let's get started. Let's go for a round of introductions. So first, thanks for joining us here on the community call. My name is Hannah. I'm a member of the Kong team. Today we're going to have Jeremy and Ross from Optum joining us. Guys, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hey, I'm Jeremy. I work at Optum as a software engineer. I'm based out of Greenville, South Carolina.
And hi, I'm Ross. I work for Optum, I'm a software engineer, and I'm based out of Denver, Colorado.
Great. Other folks on the call, I'd love to hear who you are, where you're from, and anything else you'd like to share with us this morning.
Hey, it's Declan. I'm part of the support team here at Kong, and I'm based out of Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm from Germany. I work for Codecentric. We are a solution provider, and we want to make Kong an interesting product for the German market.
Awesome. Hey, Daniel.
Hi. I'm Aaron. I'm also with Optum. I'm based out of our Minneapolis office.
Hi, I'm Magnus. I'm also with Optum, and I work with the other three guys from Optum, and I am working out of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hi, this is Raja. I'm also from Optum. I work with Magnus and all our engineers here. Yep.
I'll jump right in.
I'm from Reston, Virginia.
Oh, sorry. Hi guys, I'm Kevin. I just joined Kong a week ago. I'm their new developer advocate.
Cool. Looks like we have a few more folks on there. Leandro or Daniel?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Daniel from Brazil, Daniel Lieberman. I'm working from Brazil at iFood, a food delivery phone application and internet service.
Oh. Daniel, are you still there? All right, how about Gaston or Leandro? No? Okay, well, let's get started with our agenda. So we did our round of introductions. I have an exciting announcement about Kong Summit 2019 here for you in a minute. And then Jeremy and Ross are going to present about what they do at Optum and how Kong has facilitated their journey. And we'll leave some room for questions and open agenda at the end. So very excitingly, our CFP for Kong Summit 2019 will be released next week. So keep your eyes out. We'll be posting, widely and contact you in various ways. So if you have something you'd like to share or present at Kong Summit, please keep your eyes out, and we'd love to hear from you. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass the baton off to Jeremy and Ross.
All right. Let me start sharing my screen.
Yeah.
All right, everyone see?
Yep.
So, hey everybody, we're Jeremy and Ross, and we're the two engineers at Stargate responsible for modernizing the API gateway technology used at Optum. And to tell you a little bit about the company, turn you over to Mr. Justice.
Sure, so we are Optum. We service the IT industry around healthcare. We are under the United Health Group, healthcare company umbrella. We have over 300,000 employees within United Healthcare Group. We service hundreds of different products, which boils down to thousands of APIs between our production and non-production environment. We have over 10,000 APIs. For each of those APIs, we leverage thousands of different consumers that access our APIs in a variety of different manners. Our team is quite small. We got one product owner, one manager, and then two engineers. So between the four of us, we're doing big things within Optum. A lot of big work's been going on lately, and Ross is here to talk about some of it.
So we started this effort in the final weeks of 2017, and we had an existing vendor product fitting the role of an API gateway solution. many of the priorities we set out for this modernization effort were reflections of concerns we'd had with that existing vendor product. So we were really looking for something that was open source, that could run in the cloud. Obviously, we wanted the most performant solution possible. And I don't want to get too far into our selection process. Spoiler alert, we ended up choosing Kong as the gateway technology. What I'd like to focus on for this meeting is more what specific implementation challenges did we run into when we tried to stand this up at an enterprise level? Mr. Justice, would you like to talk about some of those challenges?
Certainly. So within Optum, we hadn't had a whole lot of familiarity around leveraging and contributing back to a lot of the open source technology applications out there. So we had to start understanding how we could contribute to these applications and give back to the community in an enterprise approved manner. We had to learn how to deploy our applications onto private cloud and how to maintain and manage them. We had to figure out how to produce high availability and provide disaster recovery with these applications. We had to work through enterprise security approval and gaining the trust of allowing open source applications to thrive within the enterprise, implementing logging, telemetry, reporting, and metrics for all of our application stack, automation around kind of the mundane and the maintenance tasks within our application, as well as driving consumer engagement and consumer onboarding for the newer applications that we were building out.
So let's talk about open source integrations in a big enterprise setting. United Health Group has its roots as an insurance company, and insurance is a business all about mitigating risk. And for a long time, open source technology was seen as a risk. Now, due to the support from our senior leadership, Optum is now beginning a journey where we're embracing open source technology more, and as the benefits become more obvious, leadership is getting more and more on board. So I'm really excited in the direction that we're going with this. So I want to talk a little bit about specifically what we had to do within our company to leverage open source technology, and hopefully our experiences can benefit others in a similar situation. So for us, in order to just leverage Kong to start with, in addition to having the support to even consider an open source technology, we just had to have a technical review and publish tracking documents in our internal portal. Being part of the open source community, though, means also contributing back for us. And this, again, because of the push we got from our leadership about open source, ended up being a pretty straightforward process. We just had to submit all of the plugins that we built out to support, in any type of custom functionality that we needed to a technical review and a legal review, and publish those tracking documents to our own internal repos. And finally, we were very happy to include in our open source journey a partnership with Kong to feature some of our more popular plugins on Kong Hub for public consumption. And for us, all we really had to do in our company to allow that to happen is have legal approval for Kong to use our logo on their page. Mr. Justice, let's talk about some more technical challenges.
Yep, so one of the most important things to the enterprise is you need to be able to provide high availability with your applications as well as to recover from disaster. So in the event that we wanted to have the highest availability possible, we leveraged all of our data centers to create a multi-data center deployment. We leveraged a load balancer to be able to distribute that traffic evenly across our data centers where they were reporting healthy traffic. We have zero downtime deployments where we can, instantly change a config value. And as all the application redeploys itself, there will be no customer downtime or no foreseen impact when we make little changes or need to do like a rolling bounce of the application on the fly very quickly. Our databases are cluster driven. So if we were to lose a database node, it would not cause customer impact or impact any of the API transactions within the company. In the event that the databases were to go down or we were to lose a database node and unable to restore it, we have database backups that occur on a 24-hour basis, as well as restoration scripts that can bring that old recorded data back into fresh database nodes. Our application is containerized, so for deployments, we can do fast recovery where we just set up the environment variables and redeploy to the cloud in the same manner that we already had the application stood up in a matter of minutes. So it provides us a very quick way to bring the application back up on our private cloud.
Sure. So when you start talking about making fundamental changes to the security architecture of a massive enterprise, it shouldn't come as too much of a shock that there are some compliance concerns and hurdles to be overcome as well. In order to use Kong from an enterprise security compliance standpoint, the only thing we really had to do is include an external WAF application in our stack. This is to protect against some attack vectors that Kong natively is not able to protect against. It was helpful in getting us approved that Kong is also supporting right out of the box the default security patterns that we absolutely had to support in order to run at our company. Another thing we had to run past security was one of our custom plugins for provider-side security. This fills the same niche as was filled by the existing proprietary gateway solution, just does it in a slightly different way, so it was fairly easy to get approved for us. And then the last thing we had to run by our enterprise security team was an improvement to the routing flows that we can support for certain patterns that Kong enables us to do that we were not able to achieve with the prior solution. Once we got those new routing flows approved, we were able to shave entire network hops out of certain different types of transactions. And that's just another benefit that Kong brought to our stack. And let's talk a little bit about some of the auditing that we require.
Yeah, within our new application stack, we wanted to make sure we had all kinds of telemetry, logging, reporting, and alerting for various application hosts and transaction level data for everything that goes through the API gateway. So the applications we chose to leverage was Splunk because it has unparalleled data visualization and analytics around the transactions happening through our applications. Dynatrace was another one because many of the applications within the company leverage Dynatrace, and it provides kind of point-to-point independent application transaction monitoring, as well as latency information and results between independent apps. Prometheus and Grafana for some high-level telemetry data, API dashboarding for customer-facing, as well as alerts that can go directly to the customer when API transactions face issues. We then chose NetData for container level monitoring, as well as a StatsD exporter. Since Kong offers StatsD metrics, it can feed metrics into NetData, which then can be scraped by Prometheus to provide that Grafana dashboard, customer-facing API dashboards. NetData itself runs sidecar to our Kong container to be able to scrape all those container-level metrics and provide that API data to Prometheus and Grafana. We also leverage open tracing, and just recently started doing so. With open tracing, we're pointing Kong to our Jaeger deployment and getting those open tracing latency metrics out there for other applications to integrate with as well, to kind of show those point-to-point solutions, which really essentially overlaps with what Dynatrace does, but we wanted to move towards open tracing so we can kind of begin the retirement of proprietary vendor products and move towards open source solutions like what open tracing and Jaeger provide within our application stack.
Yeah. So let's highlight a few of the routine tasks that we've automated that we've seen a lot of value out of too, especially at an enterprise scale. This type of automation is almost required in order to run. So the first thing that we noticed when we initially began running Kong is that expired OAuth tokens persist in the database. So we just wrote a quick Python script that runs as a 24-hour cron to delete them. We also wrote a quick Python script that runs as a 24-hour con to take database backups. And again, this is for our DR. One of the things I'm very proud of is we also wrote an entire stability test suite, which runs as a Jenkins job, again, on a cron schedule every 4 hours. To go into a little bit more detail about this, what this does is it doesn't just test the basic service and route functionalities of Kong. It also tests every property of every plugin that we commonly use within Optum for any proxy. And this test suite not only allows us to be confident that our environment is stable at any given moment, but it's also very helpful if we make a change to some core part of Kong or even more of a tangential portion that we're not sure is going to have adverse effects to other areas. We can just run the test suite against it and be sure that everything we need to work is going to work, or otherwise, depending on how the test goes. Again, quick little Ansible script to just rotate logs. This is more useful, not necessarily on Kong, but more useful on our databases, but valuable nonetheless. And automated cert rotation scripts. both for our database and for our gateway. And although these only get run once a year, of course, it's a good idea in terms of stability to automate a process like that. It's too easy to make a mistake.
So with the setup of our new application stack, we then had to solve for customer onboarding and customer engagement. Originally, as we were a small growing application, we started off with one email distribution list, and we would have customers reach out to us to our email distribution list as well as respond through the email distribution list. This became hard to maintain as we got lots and lots of customers. It became hard to kind of keep your context of who you were responding to with regards to which problems. And we quickly figured out just that wouldn't work at scale. So then we progressed on to ticket work orders, where customers would submit a work order ticket. It would get assigned out to somebody. Somebody would do whatever needed to be done, whether it was a consultation or a request to create, proxies or consumers within the API gateway, and then respond back to those work orders that the work was complete. Within that, we found problems where the UI wasn't intuitive to the customers. Customers were unsure of kind of the status of where their ticket was, when it should be completed by. So we decided to iterate one more time and get to where we are now, which is a customer-centric self-service model. This is leveraging a GitHub kind of ops model where customers will PR different resources to our repo, whether it be proxy resources or new consumers to create on the gateway. GitHub then sends a webhook call to this custom Java application we've written that we call the Stargate agent. The agent then integrates directly with the Kong admin API to make those resources that were requested a reality within the gateway itself. So it provides customers with a quick one-click solution to be able to create resources, and we can validate those resources and then create them within Kong if we consider what they're creating to be correct.
Finally, let's take a look at some of the benefits that we've seen from this effort. So just as a direct comparison, you can see the graphic in the lower right. Kong is 80%, gives us an 80% reduction in overall gateway time compared to the existing solution. The graph you can see in the lower right is an excerpt from a performance test, the gray bar being the average response time for that performance test on the existing solution and the orange bar being Kong. You can just visually see that difference. One of the things that didn't end up making it into this deck, it looks like, but something I want to highlight is that the resource efficiency of Kong allows us to go from more than 100 virtual machines, which were required to run the existing solution, to 2 containers that will host more or less the same amount of traffic. That is an enormous reduction in infrastructure costs, as well as just being generally more efficient to the enterprise as a whole. We're currently serving about 10% of the entire traffic for the enterprise on Kong, and although that proportion is not very high, the overall volume, considering the number of services that we have in Optum, is fairly high. The last point that I wanted to bring up is more or less a result of Kong being an open source application, but it really bears repeating. The extensibility of Kong has provided Optum with so much value in order to support a myriad of customized use cases and just edge case scenarios. And to do any of this with a vendor product would have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, and almost certainly very costly. So overall, our move to Kong is looking very promising for Optum, and we're all really excited about where we're going with it. And I think that's about it.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeremy and Ross. Really appreciate y'all sharing. Are there any questions from folks on the call about Optum presentation or about Kong?
Hey guys, Pat O'Dowd from GSK. Yeah, it looks really good stuff, guys. What database are you guys using? Would you share that and just tell us your experience with the DB side of things?
I would be happy to. I just want to really quickly glance over at my product owner. Is it fair to discuss our specific database solutions publicly?
Sure.
Yes? Okay, so we use a Cassandra database. We have 2 separate data centers within Optum, and we deploy 1 Kong cluster per data center for DR purposes. In each of those data centers, we have 3 Cassandra nodes. So it's a 6-node cluster total. our experience with the product is that Cassandra is an extremely resilient database solution. Right now with our current setup, we can lose up to a node per DC with zero impact to our customers. And that's just a great position to be in regardless. Our experience with backup and reinstall scripts for it has been pretty great as well. In general, I have nothing bad to say about Cassandra. The only thing you want to look out for, of course, is if you have an instance where you need to do lots and lots of inserts very quickly, say, for instance, OAuth token creation. If you need to hit that endpoint at very high TPS, you could run into some issues there. But in general, I'm very happy with the Cassandra solution. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, I would say that's accurate. We kind of run a rigid Cassandra installation and deployment where we do replication across all our nodes, because we found a couple of little instances where the replication of Cassandra, how it moves data around node to node, if you don't have a strict replication factor, it can kind of cause issues with the admin API or things like OAuth token creation that does those quick read writes. So I would say you want a strict replication factor to your Cassandra cluster where all the nodes would contain all the data.
Hey, this is Sean Chappell. I'm a colleague of Pat's. Did you already have Cassandra experience in your company before you went down this path?
Not much. There may have been other applications that used Cassandra, but to my knowledge, I believe we were one of the first. I know I didn't have any experience with Cassandra prior to working with Kong, and I don't think Jeremy did either. And I know we were one of the first because we did have to have a policy rule change in order to allow us to connect to a Cassandra database from a specific network zone. So we had to be one of the first.
Yeah, I would say that part of our Optum technology culture of trying to embrace open source, Cassandra was on that path, and now so going with Cassandra, both of those things were a calculated kind of risk outside Optum, and one that we embraced wholly and took a lot of work to get the company kind of comfortable with it. But once we did, and we've proven out, everything has been a really great journey, and more teams within Optum are now embracing and using these technologies.
Great, interesting. Any other questions?
So guys, you were saying you've got, so we're doing the same, we have a 3-node Cassandra cluster running on Azure right now, just in one data center. We're probably going to, expand that on to, a second data center and possibly a third one. But I think it was Jeremy that mentioned that, we're definitely hitting some issues with the admin API, I think, not able to delete stuff, for example, even though it's shown as deleted on the GUI. So maybe maybe that's a great tip there we can explore.
Yeah, look at a couple GitHub issues out there. I know I've posted in a couple where I talk about a couple issues with replication factor and the admin API. If you just search in GitHub on Kong, you should actually kind of run into those and see kind of the comments from a lot of the Kong principal engineers, as well as our dialogue and kind of where I went with it, which was just to, scrap having every node only having a portion of the data. And just if you do replication across all nodes, all of those problems go away. It's not ideal in the sense that your Cassandra cluster is now going to have to be a little bit slower for those read writes, but it does give you the stability at that point, which is really important for us because we needed the stability.
Yeah, and considering how robust Kong's caching solution is, a little bit of extra latency on read writes is more than.
I think we lost Ross.
Very often.
I guess his latency kicked in.
Yeah.
So are your two data centers, are they fairly close to each other then for the replication? Yeah, or is that something you have to factor in?
Oh, like physically close? Not really. They are, you're going to eat a little bit in, I guess, depending on how your data centers are configured, depending on whether or not there is a dedicated trunk. You might eat a little bit of latency, but in general, you don't usually feel that from the gateway perspective unless you are doing something specifically like an insert, like creating an OAuth token or or creating a router service or making a change.
Right.
Shouldn't be very routine activities.
So you think you could have that set up even with, let's say, US and Europe in a cluster?
You'd have to test it is really the thing. I mean, you could do a lot. It would really depend on the specific paths that the traffic between the Cassandra nodes had to take. You'd really, if I was you, I would just have to set it up and give it a quick test to know for sure.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
To answer your question, our data centers are relatively physically close. Without giving too many details.
No, that's interesting. That's my experience with other stuff, not Kong, and that if the data centers weren't pretty close and I was trying to do any kind of synchronous replication, I had to find other ways to do it. But yes, we're pretty new to Kong. So it sounds like the tokens, the OAuth tokens, if we use ping federate for our token processing and stuff, so we
you don't even have to store anything. Yes, ping federate. We also integrate with ping federate here at Optum. So yeah, you just do OpenID Connect, so you don't actually have to insert it all into your database and day-to-day operations, do you? Unless you're changing a proxy.
That's interesting. So you're doing the same then with so you're using ping federate for an OpenID Connect as the plugins in on your APIs and stuff, huh?
Right, and we cache that in the local memory. We don't use we don't have a plugin that writes those tokens to database from ping federate. We would just cache it in local memory and let each independent Kong gateway and the various data centers cache that into local memory and do lookups on that and validate the token essentially.
Jeremy, is multi-IDP public?
Yes, or actually no. We have a variant of OpenID Connect out there on GitHub, but it's not the one that we're leveraging internally.
Yeah.
But is that something, guys, you have to configure to say, don't store tokens, in DB versus, just doing, or is there kind of like, is that the default that it just stores the tokens in memory or?
Well, we wrote a custom plugin to facilitate our entire OpenID Connect interaction with ping federate. So the way that we wrote it, it uses the singletons cache, but you would have to. I don't expect there would be a default. You would have to. I mean, are you just using the OAuth 2 plugin in Kong?
We're using the OpenID Connect Enterprise plugin.
So I have no experience with this plugin. I can't speak to exactly how you'd set it up.
Okay.
We wrote our own custom piece to get it done for us, and it's more or less a result of the fact that Optum does have a fairly customized use case for OpenID Connect in some instances. Like, for instance, you might go to more than one identity provider depending on the specific nature of the proxy call. So we had to build out our own from scratch, and that's just how we wrote it.
So you built some logic in then to verify the tokens or something like that, huh?
Yeah, we have, depending on the call, we might either call a JWKS endpoint and validate the token there. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're getting kind of deep. But we might either call a JWKS endpoint exposed by ping federate and use that key to validate the token, or post the token to the authorization endpoint exposed by ping federate and cache those validation results for the lifetime of the token, depending on couple specifics in the pattern.
Interesting. Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's what we're doing with the OpenID Connect, the enterprise one. The Kong team kind of stepped us through it, whereby we're going out to that JWKS to verify the token is good, using the certs in that JWKS and all that. But yeah, so far it's working, but real good. But under the covers, I'm not really clear what's happening with the actual plugin. Is it storing those tokens anywhere in the DB, or what do we need the DB for?
The Kong team. I wonder if a member of the Kong team could take that question about the enterprise OIDC plugin.
Or we can take it back up with Kong, ourselves. But it's great to hear what you guys are doing too.
Yeah, Colin or JPK, are either of you on?
My gut says no. So better to keep in separate virtual network itself. Because demo is like a demo only, but QA environment, QA setup, which you did, it's actually for the verification and validation for 2.0. So better we keep it separate and demo separate. So later point of time, so we want to just remove the demo environment. Just again.
Kind of hard to hear that from me, guys. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I couldn't hear that either. Colin, could you?
I wasn't sure if that was just maybe an open mic.
Okay. If that was the question, could we repeat it once more really clearly?
I think it just might have been an open mic. So my knowledge of OpenID says we should not need to store anything locally. But then my knowledge of the specifics of the implementation of that plugin, not super well versed in that particular one. I don't know. I should throw JP under the bus.
No worries, guys. You know, we know, of course, we don't expect you to know the answer to this kind of stuff on the fly. You know, might take a bit of research and stuff. But so it looks like United Group, or I've forgotten the name. I joined late here, guys.
United Health.
United Health. So you've got like thousands of APIs running through the gateway. It sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah, many thousands of individual APIs, thousands of individual API consumers, although that's total for the company. It's not necessarily all that we have on Kong right now. There are currently only hundreds of individual consumers on Kong at Optum right now, but even still.
Yeah, we're still scaling out and building out the product and bringing on more APIs and customers as we speak. Like right now, we've only got 10% of our APIs brought over onto the newer Kong stack. So there's still a lot of room for growth. And I'm sure, you know, as we progress, there's going to be a lot of discussions between us and Kong running at scale. And the more APIs and more consumers we bring on, witnessing how its performance and how it behaves under load as we grow.
So you don't. So I think I saw something there about consumer onboarding. That's something we're doing here, where we're trying to kind of automate some of that consumer onboarding.
Right.
Is that? It kind of sounds like you did something similar there.
Right. Yeah. We have our homegrown solution of a self-service leveraging GitHub essentially, where people PR, you know, do a pull request with gateway resources, whether it's a new consumer or a new proxy that needs to be created. And then we validate the taxonomy of the proxy URI structure, as well as the consumers that are authorized and any kind of extra plugins that they want to throw on the proxy to make sure if it follows our enterprise standards. And then we create it automatically leveraging the Kong admin API. I'm pretty sure as an enterprise customer, you're probably leveraging the Kong GUI or something of the sorts at the moment and just managing those resources kind of manually.
Yeah, so right now, you know, we're writing kind of, you know, curl scripts to go off and, you know, create our services, create our routes, consumers, add plugins to services and routes and stuff. But yeah, well, we've only got a few APIs up there right now. But, you know, of course, we're hoping that it's going to grow. And this demand is definitely there. So we're thinking, you know, we need to start automating this stuff. And we're thinking, you know, say for example, the provider of the API will give us an open API spec, and you know, we'll pull that in, parse it, and add the service routes and plugins and stuff to Kong.
This is the exact conversation that we had internally about a year ago. Yeah. With the open API spec, the only reason we really couldn't make it work in Kong is that there are many different gateways that you could potentially be able to publish to within Optum, deployed to different network zones to support various things. And we just weren't able to get the information out of the open API spec that would tell us where does this service need to go. But you could, in theory, do that. You could do exactly that with an open API spec.
Nonetheless, we still do leverage open API specs, and it does go into kind of our taxonomy and governance of APIs as they work their way from non-production to production. So we are still leveraging some open API spec goodness in there.
Yeah, we still use it, but it's part of the quality governance process, which also applies to APIs and Optum. And I don't want to talk about that too much here.
Sure.
But.
Sounds good, and it's probably something for Kong, to generate something in the product that, I'm sure that's a common request that folks want to onboard APIs, and even, consumers APIs much easier than the current product. I think there is stuff happening there within Kong.
In the enterprise product, doesn't it ship with an admin UI of some type? Kong team, maybe you can confirm.
Yeah, there's definitely an admin UI, and there's a full-blown API over that admin API. Then that's what we use to create all our Kong objects, and it's it's very, very powerful stuff. But it's very much that for example, someone comes out with a new API. You have to right now. You have to do a bunch of stuff to get that API onto the gateway configured.
Yeah, if you check the Kong forum, I know there's been some discussions around parsing open API specs and creating resources on top of that. So I would go check out there. I think it is kind of in the radar. I don't know if it's actually a roadmap item yet, but I know that Kong is aware of it as kind of a highly requested item.
Yeah, so we are aware of that. We have recently done some work around importing and exporting as well as declarative config. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just for the sake of clarity, and we do need to improve this in the docs, if one is using declarative config, that's only if you're running dbless. Running dbless is nice if you're doing kind of level 4 stuff. So basically, if the proxy can be stateless, then dbless is a good choice. You can then, scrap Cassandra and Postgres entirely. If you're running with a DB though, DB import is a good way to kind of pseudo declarative config it, and it does make Kong a little more approachable from a CI/CD kind of DevOpsy perspective.
Sounds good. So at United Healthcare, do you guys use Kubernetes at all? That's another one that we're looking at and thinking, well, do we need it or do we not need it? And I think you said you're using Docker, so we start to use that. But the next piece was, is Kubernetes, does it make any sense to use it for something like an API gateway?
Yeah, I could talk about that briefly. I mean, we have a lot of different products and platforms and things within our company, within Optum. Kubernetes is definitely a large piece of that, but as well as many other different containerization platforms that are out there. So I think anything that can orchestrate the containers is a good fit for scaling out API gateways.
Great. Any other questions for either the Optum team or the Kong team while we're all on the call? Nope. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Our next call will be May 14th. Please add your name to the list of folks on the agenda to receive the calendar update that goes out every month with information about this call. And keep your eyes peeled for our CFP for Kong Summit 2019. Thanks again for presenting, Jeremy and Ross. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to. Thanks for the platform.
Absolutely. Have a great day, all.
See you, everybody.
Take care.